Before going to bed, let's cast a final eye on the queremonious President Putin leaking like a leftover cabbage that somehow has slightly thawed in the Smeg fridge. A man whose heminthic tendencies have transformed a great nation into a carnival of deceit and chest-thumping. He who denies the ICBM, the intercontinental ballistic missile launch, as if disputing a speeding ticket, instead claiming it was merely a medium-range missile, continues. He seems to confuse global scrutiny with an audience of jectagacious Kremlin cronies who are as sycophantic as they are janiform. Double-faced, that is. Let me be clear. I will accept no jobation from Putin, and nobody should. This isn't the schoolyard, and we're not impressed by hypersonic hazelnuts, his so-called Oreshnik missile. Put it back in his trousers, for all his posturing about symmetrical responses to Western aggression. The truth is as plain as the tragic wreckage in Dnipro. This is not sabotage. This is not strategy. This is a tantrum by a child who ought to know better, and one poorly disguised at that. Putin's testing ground rhetoric reveals a man so hebetudinous that he mistakes war crimes for experiments. Now, his latest salvo of threats includes Britain and the US as legitimate targets. Oh, spare us the bluster! While he parades around warning of global conflict, let us remember the most remarkable thing about Putin, his uncanny ability to be simultaneously belligerent and terrified. This is a man who lowers the nuclear threshold while hiding behind pre-recorded videos to mask his absence or his death. Even his own state propagandists are left whispering about his health. Putin may fancy himself a tsar of consequence, but increasingly he resembles a crumbling statue on a wind-swept plinth. Plinth Putin. And what of his new toy? The alleged hypersonic wonder missile, a symbol perhaps of the kleptocratic despair gripping the Russian military-industrial complex. Analysts rightly ask why such an expensive weapon would be squandered on Ukraine, and the answer is simple. Symbolism. Trump's strategy. In Putin's Russia, when his ground forces can only advance through swarm tactics and North Korean cannon fodder, the missile becomes his pathetic attempt to cling to relevance. Zelensky's scathing dismissal of Putin as a mad neighbour is spot on. Here stands a man who cannot tolerate dignity, freedom or independence near his borders. Putin rails against the West but fails to comprehend that Ukraine, armed with Western weapons and moral clarity, the latter more important, is not merely resisting but thriving in its resolve. Today on the streets of Kyiv, as the snow gathers, there are people with brushes sweeping the streets, sweeping the pavements. That doesn't even happen here in the UK. It certainly doesn't happen in Rugby. Every storm, shadow and attackums launched into Russian territory sends a clear message. His threats are to be met with action. His symmetrical responses fall short of intimidating anyone. While Putin waxes poetic about maximum effort to avoid nuclear war, let us not forget his penchant for using language as a smokescreen. His heminthic response, his heminthic approach to governance, burrowing, sabotaging, deceiving, has not only tarnished Russia's reputation but laid bare the limits of his power. He may clutch at missiles and threats like some putrid adolescent, But history will remember him not as a feared leader, but as a queremonious Janiform relic who turned bluster into defeat.